Today we are going to talk about crying African God and about the African Union and why do African people not waking up. African God, Mongo God, the mother of all humankind. African God is crying because the African Union is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. African Union is supposed to be doing specific things for African people. Mongo God is crying because Africa was colonized, Africa divided, Africa invaded, Africa enslaved. Mongo God is crying because Africa till today is divided, colonized, and is giving foreign religions. African is giving religion in order to spend most of their lives worshiping, praying, hoping, and fighting, while foreigners are creating, invading, and leading. African God, Mongo God is crying because Africa, till today, having obstacles. For example, Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for trying or fighting to free or to stop segregation against black people. Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for fighting against segregation against black people. He was enslaved for over 20 years and he was called a terrorist. Nelson Mandela was put into the group of terrorists for trying to end segregation against black people. In Uganda, Idi Amin was hated. Idi Amin hated to see in Uganda that the best hospitals, the best schools, the best facilities were only for white people. Idi Amin did not want that. Therefore, foreigners kicked Idi Amin out of Africa. In Libya, Muammar Gaddafi was the best leader for all Africa, was the best leaders in whole Africa. And he was the best leader for African people. And he was making greatest changes for Africa. He was making Africa the best nations ever. Foreigners did not like that. They kicked Muammar Gaddafi and they turned Libya inside out. I said to NATO, shame on you for shaming, embarrassing, and humiliating Libya and for damaging Africa. Shame on you. African God is crying because foreigners have the ability to help Africa, but they do not want to help Africa. Foreigners only making sure that things that impact, or any situation in Africa that impact foreigners will do everything in their power to help on those situations. For example, foreigners will do everything to make sure that transportation such as airlines and airlines facilities are doing great. Telecommunications and telecommunications facilities are doing great. And Ebola facilities are in control. They will do the best to make sure that things are in good shape, and they are doing thanks to foreigners. And African unions have difficult job, because African Union was the idea of the bravest, smart, and strong man, and that man was Muammar Gaddafi. And it was his idea to have African Union. He was smart and brave. So whoever taking over the African Union must be smart, intelligent, and brave. But you can see, this is why African God is crying, because you can see that African Union following and taking commands from foreigners. There are few wars, at least 5 wars currently now in Africa, but African Union cannot stop, because those wars are affiliated with foreigners. So African Union's waiting for command on how to fight African war. Remember, shame on you, African Union. You are the leader of Africa. You don't want someone else from outside Africa telling you how to take care of your own nations. You are selling Africa. African Union letting Chinese building military base in Africa. You are welcoming, you are bringing back the colonization, African Union. Don't do that. You are shaming and taking advantage of African people. And Chinese are fighting in their Chinese Sea, or China's territories, or China's neighboring. China is building islands in disputed sea and controlling all the areas, claiming that every areas in the regions that belong to them. They don't want anyone else to go nearby. Why you Chinese come to Africa and buying, or whatever situation that is, you are taking the land in Africa for yourself, why you don't want anyone else to come to your area? Don't you think that's fair? You Chinese, shame on you. Stop that. Africans do not want that. African people are not scared anymore, because Africans were scared for wrong things for a long time. While you looking and asking yourself questions, why do Africans are scared while they have the worst disasters in the world, the worst diseases in the world, worst starvation in the world, and poverty, enslaving, torturing. African people are murdering, killing their own people, taking command and killing their own people, raping of their own people. African people, shame on you. That's very bad. Someone telling you to kill your own people, that is your enemy. Anyone telling to kill your own people, giving you weapon to kill your own people, that is your enemy. African people must be strong. You have to stand up A lot of things are against Africans. So it's not going to be easy. African Union has many obligations. The job of African Union is to respect African government's law. African Union jobs is to invest in African resources. African Union is to protect all Africa. You can ask yourself why there is African Union, which is over 50 countries. And African Union spends a lot of money on peacekeeping, while there will be one country, and African Union cannot stop a war of one single country in Africa. And that is simply because of foreigners' influence. For example, in Congo, there will be like Israeli there and British working and mining, and they will bring a lot of money and resources and such as weapons to protect their interest. And meanwhile, Africans are dying from those weapons. Africans are dying from the chemicals that are being used in mining and processing. This is the end of sleeping Africans. Africans must wake up. Africans telling African unions to do its job. But you can see African unions go to Europe and becoming friends with African Union. What do you have, you African Union, what do you have to tell Europeans? They're always telling you what to do. So that's not friendship, that's not unity. It is not going to be easy. It is a very hard work for Africans to stand up and to move on. It is about time now. Do you know why it's the best time now for Africans to become independent? Because foreigners are busy fighting against each other. Foreigners now are not getting along well. But once foreigners are getting along well, then they are coming back to Africans again. Europeans or foreigners brings foreign religions to Africans to manipulate and brainwashing Africans. That is a problem. So we should follow our own Africans, Watotism, African religion, Mungu God, African God, telling us there is nothing you can stop. African God says there is nothing you can stop. You can only make the path you want to take, which means do not try to stop foreigners. You cannot stop them, but you can do or make things, and those things or your action will change them. African God, Mungu God, the mother of all humankind, for good and strength, for bad and weakness, focus, creation, and blessing. That's it for today.